Just looking back to just your period during the war and everything that you and your family went through, what do you attribute your survival to? What do you think allowed you to, survive through the war years?
Well, actually, I for the we went to Budapest in '41, and we were not in peril for 4 years until '44. In '41, when Eichmann came to Budapest, then they started to deport. The Jews were deported from all over Hungary, but they never touched the people in Budapest. At that point, they started to deport the people to Germany from Budapest as well. The only reason that we managed to escape that is that it happened very late in the war, and the Russians were very, very close. In fact, Budapest was encircled, and so they couldn't deport people any longer. So our survival really, we managed to survive until the war came, until Budapest was liberated.
How do you feel about the Hungarian people now, or the Germans, looking back?
It's hard to say. I mean, especially, how can you... Personally, I hate the Hungarians more than the Germans, because they were the ones who hurt me, who killed my father and who killed my brother, to both brothers. They were responsible for it, not the Germans. Not that the Germans didn't, in the long run it was the Germans, of course. But how can you still go on living and be full of hate of the younger generation? They were not responsible for what happened. And I know that, in particular, that the German young people are in terrible turmoil because they have to face the fact that what their parents did. I understand that it's a big problem for those that have conscience. There are some that still talk about, destroying the people. So it's.
Have you been back to Czechoslovakia and
Yes,
Hungary?
yes. My husband never wanted to go back, but I convinced him because I equated with the salmon that get born up in the, where is it, in Alaska? And they leave and then come back to spawn. There is a certain instinct to go back to where you were born. I always wanted to do that. And but I finally convinced my husband to do it. We went back, and our daughter Ricky came with us, and she filmed the whole trip. We went to my husband's village, and everybody came running, because he used to do photographs for a living, because they took away, the same day that my father lost his job, they took away the shop that his father had. And so he had a camera and he would photograph people. So they all ran home and brought the photographs that he took. But the people that were living in his house, we were standing on the street talking, and the son of the woman who now lived in that house with him was totally, he was nervous. He was a nervous wreck. We didn't find out until later that if we wanted, we could get the house back, provided we wanted to live there. We didn't find that out until much later, and so we reassured them that we don't want to go back to the, we wouldn't, but at that point I was so full of, me come back to this, because they are very poor. They really are very, very poor, because they could have been part of Czechoslovakia and chose Russia, and they're devastated. And everybody wanted to know if we could send them papers to come to the United States. I said, me come back to this, and then I started to boast, we have this and we have that. It was just like vengeful, but it felt good. And so, and the same thing in my hometown. We went to mine also, because we were living in the same area, about 10 kilometers away from each other's town.
Yeah.
And so I had the same experience in my town. So I looked up some people that I went to school with. They were very decent and very, everybody was very apologetic. So, but it did cure me forever wanting to go back there. I have absolutely no desire. I have gone back to Czechoslovakia, but not the part where I was born. That doesn't do anything for me. As much as I wanted to go there originally, but that trip was enough to convince me it's not something for me to dwell on. So.
Did the war change your religious beliefs at all, or do you?
In the beginning, yes, but when we had the children, we felt there has to be some continuity is the right word, and so we joined a synagogue, quite different from what we grew up with, because the men and women were separate in a synagogue in Europe, in the small villages at any rate, but the reason we were attracted to this particular conservative movement is because we were able to sit together. Mm-hmm. And so we helped build the synagogue. We were very involved because we bought an old building, threw it down and built a Hebrew school first, and then the synagogue. I'm still involved with that. My husband was at one point president of the synagogue because he was totally involved.
Mm-hmm. So you're involved with this synagogue you helped build up?
Yes.
What do you...
Well, I was president of Sisterhood.
Yeah.
And I tried to help as much as I could with different things that we, fundraisers, all kinds of bazaar and concerts and all kinds of things, and financially whenever I can.
Is there anything you want to say to the students who are going to be watching this DVD, because this will be used for teachers to show their students so that they learn from your story?
One wish that I have, and the reason I agreed to do this, is because unfortunately there are people who deny of the existence of the Holocaust. There are people with all the evidence that exists, and those of us who went through this kind of things, once we are gone, unless you have these kinds of programs, it might be believed that it has never happened. So it's terribly important. It was terribly important for us to do this kind of thing. We did it with Spielberg, and it's in the archives. And it just to try and prevent of this sort of happening to anybody. Unfortunately, a lot of it is still going on. Darfur and whatever, these things are still happening, and it sends chills through my body. Literally, I feel it right now, that people killing people for the stupidest reasons. It seems that they have a reason, but it isn't a valid one, to say the least. And so, just to try and make a better world, so that we don't have these kinds of things happening again. I know that young people are more conscious of these things than the older generation was. Because I remember when we first came to the United States, and if we wanted to talk about it, nobody wanted to listen. At least now it's pretty well documented that it all happened. And hopefully it never happens to anybody, not just the Jews. Anybody.
hope that Olga's story will not end once this DVD is complete. I hope that you have been inspired, just as I was, by her words and by all that she endured, and that you will be compelled to share her story with others and share the information that you've learned along the way. Most importantly, I hope that each and every one of you realizes that what Olga speaks of did not just occur in the past, but that serious human rights violations such as these occur every single day, and that you have the capacity to stop them. I leave you with this final request, which is to simply remember. Remember Olga's story, remember discussions you may have with your classmates about it, remember her face. And by simply remembering, a part of you will always be moved when you witness an injustice committed against another human being. You will be moved to bring justice to the situation and ensure that it never happens again. Just remember, never forget and never again.